The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Anal sex.
Good fight, good night.
Indeed. And apparently coming soon once again to MTV with Ice Cube in charge, Eric. I totally watched that.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
okay.
he's
so
he's making that and a new Friday?
I mean, I'm not so much worried about the Friday. What did you say, Jason?
I want a buddy cop movie with Ice-T and Ice Cube. And just call it Ice.
Ice, baby.
Iced out.
You know,
and then you put Vanilla Ice as the villain.
Ice, baby. Wait. First of all, this is copyrighted under W2M Network in the Kickoff, Thursday, December 12th, 2019, 12:34 a.m. Timestamp, bitch.
Yes, if anything resembling a movie comes out following this formula, we want royalties, bitches. All right, let's get to it. Good evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of season 3 of the Kickoff here on the W2M Network. I had to take a second to think. It's the 15th week, but we missed one, so this is our 14th episode. I am your host. My name is Harry Broadhurst. Once again, back at you in live living color, although audio podcast, you wouldn't know. Regardless, once again, feeling 100%, thankfully. A couple of weeks of being under the weather, back at it, ready to take the helms back over. I want to thank Eric for doing a wonderful job filling in as host in my stead.
Yeah, that was no real biggie. I mean, just keeping the seat warm for you. And, if anybody knows about live and living color, and I'm going to shut up now.
All I'm going to say is you were keeping the seat warm, but not the chair.
True. Very true.
The voice you just heard is the executive producer turned co-host, Erik Watkins.
Oh, Oklahoma, where the team comes sweeping down the field.
Oklahoma, where the wagon sometimes loses all its wheels. The voice you hear laughing there is the co-host turned executive producer, Brandon Biskobing.
And the Pac-12 is officially a dumpster fire.
Don't worry, we'll talk about that in a few moments. Dun, dun, dun.
Dramatic reverb.
Finally, the chairman of the W2M Network, Jason Teasley.
Nick Saban just asked Jalen Hurt, where's he going? And he said the playoffs.
I saw something, I forget which Facebook group I was in that I saw it on. Joe Burrows is now playing for LSU after being told that he couldn't play at Ohio State.
I read that article. The whole Division III school comment.
Like the entire, the backup from Ohio State went to, where was it? Was it, who's the other one? Losing my mind here.
Well, which backup? Because it was J.T. Barrett, then Dwayne Haskins, then Joe Burrow. That was the quarterback room at one time in Columbus.
Burrow went to LSU because he couldn't get on the field at Ohio State. Ohio State and LSU went to the playoffs, along with Oklahoma, who has former Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts.
It would have been interesting if Alabama would have made it, since Oklahoma would have had the added thing of Hurts trying to get revenge on Oklahoma, and now if LSU and Ohio State meet in the finals, then we could potentially have that possibility of Burrow trying to get revenge on Ohio State.
Yeah, don't be worried about revenge in Alabama. We'll stay tuned on that one. Hashtag tease.
Yeah, if things would have played out, they already had. If Oklahoma would have missed the playoffs, they already had it. They was doing everything in their power to get the Oklahoma-Alabama game for a New Year's Day bowl.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, too. And then, did you see where Alabama ended up facing Harbaugh and Michigan? That'll be an interesting conversation to have next week here when we preview some of the bigger bowl games here on the Kickoff. But for now, let's get back to where we usually start on this show. This is Studs and Duds. Erik, your stud for the week.
Yes, we know that very few people, if any, sat through the most garbage that was the Dolphins and Jets. Yes, we all wish that they could have recreated what they did in 1980 and have that as a game with no announcers whatsoever. We would have been fine with that. But out of that rough came a diamond.
Real quick, to be fair, if Kevin Harlan calls a game and nobody's watching, does it really happen?
Fair point. But out of that diamond, or out of that rough, came a diamond in the form of one Jason Sanders. Only one man in the history that is in the National Football League has ever kicked 8 field goals in one game. Only one had ever attempted 8 field goals in one game. Sanders became the second for those 8 attempts, and he set a Dolphins franchise record, making 7 of them. Yes, while it was no Rob Baronis, it's good enough in my book to be stud-worthy this week, especially following up with that touchdown catch from last week.
Well, I will say this much. As for the brand as Jason Sanders was, 7 field goals is impressive. The Dolphins still found a way to lose to the Jets.
Thanks to, what else? A game-winning field goal.
By Sam Kickin' Fickin'.
Great Fickin' job.
Jason, just stud.
Quick, my stud right now is an honorary stud, and Harry, you'll get the reference. I love bunnies. You'll get that reference tomorrow afternoon.
No, I don't need to get that reference tomorrow afternoon. I too love Canadian bunnies.
Oh no, you trust me. When you see what I'm seeing right now, you'll love bunnies even more.
You know what? I'm just gonna shut up right now. Let my mind wander for a few minutes. I may be back. I may not be. We'll stay tuned.
Eric's completely out of the loop on this one.
Oh no, I'm about to fill him in. Don't worry. Continue your thought.
Yeah, please. I'm just drawing a blank because there's bunnies on my screen with puppies. But my stud is actually Drew Brees, who threw for 349 yards and 5 touchdowns in a shootout of the NFC between the Saints and Niners. I was really surprised about this game. I really thought that it would be a low-scoring game. I was facing Drew Brees and Michael Thomas in the first-round playoffs of my big money fantasy football league. And Murphy's Law kicked in, and everything that could go wrong with my team did.
And you got rickety wrecked?
Let's just say that I faced off against Drew Brees and Michael Thomas.
Oh, hello.
Mike Evans went down. I had David Montgomery as a starting running back. He did absolutely nothing. The tight end for the Jets went out with the injury. Devontae Parker goes out with the injury. So, yeah.
Yeah, you got screwed.
Yeah, so it was the Murphy's Law effect, fantasy football. So for that alone, and personally, him and Michael Thomas screwing me out of a back-to-back championship, my stud will be you, Drew Brees.
Brandon, stud.
My stud for this week is Ryan Tannehill, who went for 391 yards and 3 touchdowns in the win for Tennessee over Houston, which I don't think anyone expected.
Certainly not the Dolphins fans when they let him walk.
That's for sure.
That was more an Adam Gase thing than anybody else. And they're like, oh, crap. We had the wrong guy this whole time.
I don't dislike things in Miami. I just don't think they have a franchise quarterback right now. And I say this as somebody who's a big fan of Ryan Fitzpatrick. because of everything he's done for me over the years, everything he did for us over the years up in Buffalo.
I think Rosen's going to be the answer there. It's just you have to get some help around him.
No, granted, they did trade away his best weapon right before the season started, and his best offensive lineman right before the season started, sending Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills to Houston. At the same time, though, I don't think any of us really could have predicted the dumpster fire that the Dolphins would become this season.
Well, considering as how we pretty much had them penciled in as tanking for Tua the whole way, it's just how hot is that dumpster fire burning? How high the flames are going that we didn't anticipate.
Before the season started, we didn't anticipate them being as bad as they were, Eric.
Yeah.
Fair.
And
once you saw the performances in the first couple of weeks, yes. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
They've actually played a lot better the second half of the season. I mean, it's not like they're the dumpster fire they were the first half. I mean, you've seen some bright spots the second half of the season. Devontae Parker coming into his own and showing that he can be a receiver. Fitzmagic, having great games occasionally. It's they've progressed throughout the season rather than regress.
Then again, the Redacteds have won 2 in a row as well. So who are we to?
It's a weird. Well, I think the Bengals probably have the number 1 overall pick locked up at this point.
I don't think they do.
Well, no, not officially, but considering how the.
Well, there's a certain team in New York over in the NFC.
Yes.
Well, we played the Dolphins this week, so we might be able to get a win.
Yeah, about that.
Stay tuned. All right, let's move. Let's move on. My stud for the week is the LSU Tigers. Yeah, so everybody was talking. If Georgia keeps this close, then Georgia probably gets in. If Georgia can keep this a one-score game, Georgia probably gets in. Because this will only be their second loss, but it'll be to the number 1 team in the country, and they'll be undefeated. Yeah, y'all got your asses whooped in Atlanta. Joe Burrow pretty much sealed the Heisman Trophy.
Can someone please explain to me how, for Georgia, it's a home field disadvantage at the Georgia Dome? Or, well, now Mercedes-Benz?
Because technically they're in Athens, not Atlanta.
I know this, but it's still, you would think that they'd get much more fans.
Yeah, but considering as how they also wear the same colors as the Atlanta Falcons, and we all know how they are in certain games and even having any sort of a lead. You get the idea.
Yeah.
17-3 at halftime, 34-3 after the third quarter, and you could see droves of Georgia fans leaving as the third quarter ended on a video that got posted online. It was embarrassing to the Bulldogs, and deservedly so. Oklahoma is off to the college football playoff. Why Oklahoma? Well, segue. So, the most anticipated game on Showdown Saturday was the SEC Championship. One of the other more anticipated games on Showdown weekend, Championship weekend, was the the Pac-12, the Pac-12 title game. Easy for me to say. Good grief. Let's try this again. One of the other most anticipated games was the Pac-12 championship game because number 5, Utah, was considered to be a lock to enter the college football playoff if they could beat Oregon and finish off a 12-1 season. That lone loss coming to USC on the road on a short week. Well, Oregon had something to say about that. 20-0 at halftime, 23-15 after 3, so the Utes were thinking about getting back into it, and then they didn't score another point. 37-15, the Oregon Ducks, as predicted by yours truly, by the way, knock Utah and the Pac-12 out of the college football playoff. Way to choke when it mattered most, Utes. Bravo.
Now, the big question that I have in regards to this, we were talking about this earlier on in the season. Does the fact that the conference pretty much choked their way out of the playoffs instead of getting screwed over, does that change anything in regards to the Pac-12 potentially still trying to do something?
Somewhat. It's going to be a more fervent discussion. It's going to have a different tone, but I think overall the mentality doesn't change.
Well, I would argue that if you're going to do 8, and if, you know what, let's save that for later. Let's curtail that for later because we have an entire thing coming up on that later on in the show.
Yep.
So, LSU are my studs. Utah are my duds. It segued. I'm sorry, Eric. I know you usually leave these off. You may give us your dud now.
Don't sweat it, because I had kind of a slight segue / really, really quick callback. Yeah, Niners and Saints defenses, you realize how many underbettors hate you right now? And do you realize that the fact that you both kind of disappeared and let Jimmy G and Drew Brees kind of do their thing, how much you screwed me over in FanDuel? Yeah, both of those units are my duds. I'm not complaining at the overall result. Game of the year, walk-off field goal, everything was great. But could you have given me a little bit of a heads up, because I could have profited off of it at least?
See, I would have been on the over on that game personally.
Yeah, but all of those points and things, here I am thinking I got a little bit of extra cash. Maybe I should finally go for it and enter the Sunday Million on FanDuel. Yeah, no.
Womp, womp, womp. Jason, dud.
My dud is actually the Houston Texans, who, coming off of a surprising win versus Tom Brady and the Pats, let rookie Drew Lock light them up. Lock and Noah Fant lit this defense up that was able to, mostly contain Brady and the Pats. But then they come out and shit the bed versus Denver. And to that, I think they were looking past Denver and Drew Lock and the ups and downs that Denver has experienced this year. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say Kansas City might want to watch out, because this Denver team has won versus Deshaun Watson. Who else have they beat? That's let me see here. I know it was Deshaun Watson. Let's see. Brady. And then
Denver beat New England?
Yeah. No. Denver beat.
Hold on. I'll tell you what. I'll look that up for you here in a second.
The Colts.
Let's let Bisco give his dud, and we'll look this up real quick. Bisco, what's your dud?
My dud for the week, in spite of the fact that they actually won the game, is the New York Jets for basically taking the bend but don't break philosophy to its ultimate limit and almost losing the game in the process.
Well, I do believe there was an excellent coach who is unfortunately no longer with us, who used to say, "You play to win the game."
Yes.
No.
That wasn't Dennis Green.
That was Herm Edwards that said that.
Edwards at Arizona State.
Well, now
Dennis Green is who we are, who we thought they were.
Or they are who we thought they were.
Yes, that.
So apparently none of us can get our quotes correct tonight. Good grief. We're off.
Somebody was somebody.
You know what it is? We're not used to recording on Wednesday anymore.
Not to mention bunnies. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
Look what you guys have done.
Chargers, Titans, Browns, Chargers again, Houston. So Phillip Rivers twice, Marcus Mariota, Tannehill, and Mayfield.
Tannehill.
And
I believe it.
Didn't he play Brady?
No, they haven't played. They haven't even played the Patriots this year.
The only team in the AFC East that Denver played was Buffalo when they got it, not the Patriots. The Broncos played was Buffalo, and they got it handed to them 20-3.
And
besides,
they
coming off playing the Texans, coming off playing those Patriots in pretty much their game of the year. So that was naturally going to be a letdown. I think Kansas City doesn't have it as bad as people think.
I'm going to say that I would not be surprised if they surprise Kansas City.
I would be very surprised if they surprise Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be.
How confident of that prediction are you? Will we find out later? Dun, dun, dun.
Dramatic reverb, and I'm looking at it.
Possibly.
All right, let's move on here. So that's studs and duds now that we finally got everybody's numbers figured out. Herm Edwards, I apologize for thinking you were Dennis Green and deceased. Rest in peace, Dennis Green. Let's move on. So that happened. Erik.
Well, for all the talk of the group of five, for all the talk of coaches looking and making moves, you can add another one to that list.
Don't take my pick. Don't take my... I'm being facetious because you tried to take it in the group chat earlier this week. Erik Bisco.
Yes, but I caught myself. Hashtag accidental Bisco. Hashtag never full Bisco. But anyway.
Never full Bisco.
After leading the Memphis Tigers to their third straight American Athletic Conference Western Division title and finally getting over the hump and winning the whole kit and caboodle, booking themselves to a Cotton Bowl, Coach Norvell is like, there's a dumpster fire in Tallahassee that I need to save. So Florida State looks like they finally got their man. I'm hoping not. We'll see what happens.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Now that you mentioned Norvell going from Memphis to Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
This happens because Willie Taggart was fired at Florida State.
Correct.
And Willie Taggart being fired at Florida State led to Willie Taggart landing a job at a different place.
Correct.
Dare I say segue?
You dare.
I dare. Willie Taggart landed a job at Florida Atlantic University. And for those wondering...
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't Florida Atlantic have a coach?
Florida Atlantic used to have a segment on this show. The Lane train is rolling back into the SEC. What? As Ole Miss has hired Lane Kiffin to be its new head coach.
Is this the most amount of teams? Now, obviously, he was only a coordinator. But is this the most amount of teams one coach has coached in a single conference?
I mean, he's got to be up to like 4 or 5 now, right?
Yeah.
At least 4 different SEC teams. Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss. I think he was an assistant somewhere else in the SEC as well. Erik, can you pull up that Wikipedia and get his coaching history for me?
Absolutely, because I know one of those was the USC job, and then he was with the Raiders.
The point being is that after leaving Alabama as a coordinator to become the coach at Tennessee, getting fired at Tennessee, leaving Tennessee and ending up at Florida Atlantic, Lane Kiffin has made his way back into major college football after taking Florida Atlantic to back-to-back Conference USA championships.
Good Lord, I didn't even know he was here. Jesus.
He was in Miami as well?
No, he was in Jacksonville's offensive quality control coach for the Jaguars. His college jobs, Fresno State, Colorado State, then USC, then Tennessee, then back to USC as a head coach after spending time as the two different position coaches, an offensive coordinator / passing game coordinator, then a coordinator at Alabama, then Florida Atlantic, and now. So only 3 SEC schools.
But like 8 overall, which has got to be up in terms of most college coaches.
2, 3, 4, 5. This would be his 7th.
My point being is how many other coaches that are actively involved in football can say that they've coached at 7 different universities?
I mean, his nickname that we've come up with him is quite apropos considering he moves around a lot. The Lane Train gets around the country.
I'm just saying now I dubbed that we rename that segment the Lane Train Moving Company. I have no interest in talking Ole Miss football next season, however.
No, not at all.
That segment will not be returning.
No.
All right, Jason. So that happened.
Does anybody know who Tim Ryan is?
The congressman from the state of Ohio?
No, the 49 radio color analyst who made comments about Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, who is an African American, and stated that he has a slight advantage due to his dark skin when faking handoffs. Tim Ryan has since been suspended by the 49ers and for his thing. And to top it off, Lamar Jackson earned a little bit of credit from me for the absolute hilarious thing that he done this Sunday. Did any of you notice what he done?
Yes, I did.
He wore solid white sleeves.
That's funny.
To stick it back to Tim Ryan. But this begs the question. You know, this is just an interesting topic. You know, Erik, would you have an advantage playing quarterback?
Me personally, no. But that's just because of my complexion. Now, granted, if it's maybe at night before they turn the lights on and I'm wearing dark gloves, kinda. But for me, it would be a stretch.
I have no athletic ability to play the quarterback position, therefore I would be at a disadvantage regardless. I feel like I would be like a punter. All I'm saying is I'm for the brand over here.
I'm about to say, don't let McAfee or something like that.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that in the quote-unquote current climate in the NFL, why pick out Lamar Jackson of all people?
Well, is this the first time that the 49ers have faced a team that has an African-American quarterback this season?
It wasn't even that. It was... Well, no, they faced Russell Wilson, who is...
And lost to Russell Wilson. Man, they can't be black quarterbacks, can they?
Apparently no one seems to be able to this season.
Yeah, there's that.
I'm just saying that, you know, Lamar Jackson is probably one of the... I mean, he's up there with one of the humblest QBs you'll come across. I mean, legitimate players.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see him like in the news a lot for anything outside of his football play, unless it's like goodwill stuff. So why would you just attack somebody like that? Because not only is it a total douchebag move.
I think I have the answer for that, Jason. Okay. I'm pretty sure they're probably letting the announcers drink on the job in San Francisco.
Well, I mean, considering it's San Francisco, it would be more apropos if you let them smoke on the job.
Yeah. Can confirm the 2 losses are to the only 2 quarterbacks of color that they've played this season. Oh, wait, I take that back. They beat Kyler Murray twice.
Well, it's the Cardinals, so...
Yeah, he doesn't really have a whole lot around him outside of Fitzgerald. So I think David Johnson was injured for those games. All right. Brandon, I already know what you want to discuss, and I figured this was going to be a big talking point on this show, so why don't we go ahead and get into it. So, that happened.
The Patriots had a very bad week this week. To start off, they lost the game on Sunday after a clearly blown call that everyone could blatantly see that he did not...
Wasn't named Robert Taylor.
What?
2 blown calls.
I'm mostly talking about the one where I forget who it was, but where they said he stepped out of bounds, but you could clearly see that he did not on the replay. And then, to top it all off, they then get accused of videotaping the Bengals practices, going back once again.
No.
They were not
an accusation.
That was not an accusation. That was a fact.
Okay.
There was a Patriots film staff in the Browns press box filming the Cincinnati sideline.
Yes. Okay.
And everybody wonders why the Patriots been playing shitty. They're getting their fucking plays from the Bengals.
So once again, they get caught. Another Spygate 2.0. And this is the Bengals we're talking about. This isn't like some great team that they have to be threatened by. This is the Bengals. So what do you think they do against the real teams of the NFL?
I mean, when Belichick said on to Cincinnati, we didn't think he meant this.
But yeah, right, so I mean...
Let's first of all, real quick, Bisco, because this actually does require a little bit of a backstory about this story.
Yes.
The rumors and allegations that the Patriots stated was that it was for an in-house project called Do Your Job, which is a film segment that they do as a team that gets posted on their Facebook page. In addition, they got permission from the Browns to film inside of the press box. However, the Browns did not let the Bengals know that they had permission to film inside of the press box. And when a Cincinnati staffer saw the guy in the New England Patriots outfit, he informed the National Football League officials on site.
Okay.
A, why are you filming the Bengals? What are you possibly going to learn? B, if it were a different team that didn't have a reputation for doing this, I'd be a little bit more forgiving of the fact that it was said that it was for an in-house montage segment thing that they put together there. But there is literal documentation that has come out before that if Patriot members are found to be caught filming or anything, they are said to be told to say that it is because they are filming for an in-house documentary. Have you seen this article?
No,
I have. They had that way back in 2007 after the original Spygate.
It says to blame it on the fact that they're filming for an in-house documentary. Belichick denies any and all access about this, knowing anything about this here. Methinks Belichick doth protest too much.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Not to mention the fact that it's like, Kraft TV and Kraft Productions. I can tell you one thing that he's glad that there was no Kraft TV of, but I digress.
But, I mean, I hate to be that guy. But how badly, because it just keeps on happening. It seems like every other year we have some sort of new scandal that comes about when it comes to the Patriots. How much does this hurt the Patriots' legacy? And while yes, it's normally not based around on the field things, if this were the NCAA, how many of those Super Bowls would vanish?
Jason, you haven't really chimed in much here. What are your thoughts about this?
I think this is going to define Goodell as a commissioner. If he takes a swift, hard action on
Which he won't.
this, and well, I don't think he has a choice. For one, it's the Patriots who everybody, wants to see the downfall of. For one, two, second instance of this happening. Three, he has to get some credibility back after all the screw ups that he's had in the past couple of years. So he's got to try to save face somewhat. So I think that this is going to be this could be the thing that turns Goodell's commissionership around, and he can make a statement with it and gain a little bit of respect back from other teams in the league.
Well, he's already on the 8 ball in that regard, because multiple executives from other teams have already requested and demanded to see the Patriots footage that they got, and Goodell has said no.
Exactly. So I don't expect him to do anything. Although, to Jason's point, does it change how he... I don't think it will, but could it potentially change how his outlook on this is this year as compared to others, because it is a CBA year?
I don't think it matters at this point. I honestly don't think that Goodell really cares about his public image with the other teams in the National Football League.
No. I agree with you.
I don't think Goodell cares about his public image when it comes to the fans of the National Football League anymore either.
I mean, he kind of basks in the booze at this point at the draft.
What you're going to have to do at this point is you are either going to have a group of teams stand up and say that, no, we want him out and we want him out now, or otherwise you're going to see other teams beyond just the Patriots starting to push more and more of the envelope of what they can and can't get away with. It'll be like the Astros thing going on in Major League Baseball right now.
But what's going to be funny is that, and I could see it happening, is that another team does say, oh, if they're doing it, I try to do it, but it's a less prestigious team. It's a team that Goodell feels is expendable, and they get the hammer brought down on them, and then all hell breaks loose because of it.
When is his deal up with the NFL? Eric, you would be the one that would probably know
Eric
this.
Eric would be the one to know that.
I know with this CBA coming up, I think he's still got about another year or so after that, because his last deal was for 5 years.
And wasn't that in like 2016, I think?
I could have sworn it was, it was 2018.
Oh, it was 2018.
It runs through 2023.
Okay.
So we're stuck with at least 3 more years of this prick in charge.
Yep.
Basically, unless, again, they decide to do during the CBA.
2023 is when his contract ends. I just looked at that.
Where have you gone, Paul Tagliabue? The NFL needs you.
I think all 4 leagues need new commissioners at this point.
I don't know. I like Adam Silver, especially with what he wants to do with the NBA season. Manfred, right now, to me, he's getting a lot of the job done, delivering on most of his promises. Not to mention some rules that he just changed, which I like. So
also, when it comes to Manfred as well, you got to think about what was handed to him by Bud Selig.
Exactly.
But
both Selig and Gary Bettman can kiss my ass.
He's trying to hurt the minor league system a lot, though.
That I don't think.
Different conversation, different podcast.
Yes.
Let's move on. Get back on track here, gentlemen. Maybe we could do a sports themed one in the off season for football, just sports in general.
I'd be down.
We'd have to look into that. But anyways, let's get back on topic here. Let's move on from So That Happened Here. I've got a question set up. However, it's going to be somewhat of an extended conversation, so we're going to postpone it until after I'm a Survivor, where congratulations are in order. As myself and Erik have some company on the throne. We got to get one of those super thrones built at this point. It's gonna be like a game. It's gonna be like a Game of Thrones throne. There'll be room for all three of us.
We don't have enough swords to make an Iron Throne that big.
But we sure got enough pricks to make one.
And the chief prick in charge just tied the throne. Jason just got his 6th win in a row, as he correctly predicted Minnesota's victory over I don't even remember who Minnesota played.
Detroit.
That sounds right. We'll go with that. I was correct in picking Atlanta over Carolina, and I picked that game against the spread too. I mean, I didn't have it as my Are You Serious against the spread, but I should have, because Atlanta fucking rolled Carolina. Brandon finally gets back on the board with his Green Bay pick. Erik, let's talk about New England.
Look, I was never so happy to be so entirely wrong in my life. I'm just going to say that.
Speaking of which, fun fact, and they talked about this on CBS as well when they did that. The New England Patriots' 3 losses are all 3 to playoff teams, fellow division leaders in the AFC.
Yeah, isn't their record, all their wins have came against subpar teams?
They do have a win over 9-4 Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Buffalo 16-10 in Week 4.
Is that their only win versus a team with a winning record?
It very well might be. Cleveland's getting close. Oh, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 8-5. Although Pittsburgh wasn't nearly the team they are now when they played New England.
Exactly. They didn't have Duck Dodgers in the 21st century yet.
Speaking of Pittsburgh, segue. All right, I'm about to make a prediction that's going to land me in the doghouse, and I don't give a fuck. This week is, it's Civil War here in the Broadhurst studio apartment in Youngstown, Ohio. Oh. As my Buffalo Bills play my girlfriend's Pittsburgh Steelers.
So you're saying this won't be a banger?
Well, since it got moved to Sunday night, we might be able to sneak something in the afternoon. After the game, she's going to be pissed at me because the Bills are going to win.
I was just about to say, I looked at that line and I was like, oh boy, that's not pretty.
Yeah. Did you know, Squid Bit Harry edition?
Jesus, you
that's for the first time. What was that, Erik?
Jesus, you gimmick infringing fucker. Harry edition or otherwise. You couldn't come up with your own name?
With a victory over Pittsburgh on Sunday, Buffalo would clinch a playoff spot before the final week of the regular season for the first time since 1999.
Yeah, well, with the real authentic Squid Bit, you're going up against an undrafted quarterback who won his first 3 career starts. the last time that happened, would you believe 1987 Ed Robert with the replacement redacted during the strike?
Why's he got to one-up me on Squid Bits?
All right.
Because you're stealing his gimmick?
Thank you.
I did. I infringed. I totally did. Go ahead, Jason.
On Squid Billies. I don't know. It's like Squid Billies. Just felt like saying Squid Billies.
All right, Jason.
I'm going to point out something. I'm going to take a moment to gloat since I didn't earlier. If anybody would like to go back and review the preseason college football edition of the Kickoff and hear three people laugh at a certain Ginger Damas when he made a prediction of Alabama missing the playoffs, and now that he gets to rub it in every chance that he gets, I definitely appreciate it.
Yes.
Browns doing?
Yeah, really.
Hey. You know, the Browns thing wasn't a really hot take. The Alabama thing, you guys literally laughed at me, and I think me and Erik has something wagered.
Jason.
Yes, I know.
Don't be a Robert Taylor.
No, I'm far superior to him. I think I made that very well known in the W2M Sports Chat.
All right, let's move on here. We'll actually save Jason's pick for last since he's going for the throne solo. So let's go ahead and go to the person with the lowest total in a row. Hi, Erik.
Yeah. You bet on the Patriots, you bet against the Patriots, but oh well. Anyways, to a quarterback who, quoting the great rapper Gucci Mane, nobody cares, work harder. That's exactly what he's going to do. And since I'm not going to be watching a whole bunch of this anyway, thankfully, because I've got tutoring and ... Yeah, Ravens, get it done early, put everybody out of their misery so we can go on and doing other things.
So wait a minute, you're picking Baltimore against your own Jacksonville Jaguars?
They're playing the Jets.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that is right. Thursday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm slow. I'm slow tonight. Just ignore me. Everyone else does. Brandon, there is a phrase around these parts, especially up in Buffalo, that those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it.
Well, see, there's a difference with this, because Erik, you forgot one critical you forgot one critical rule. You forgot one critical rule last week. It was a certain time last week.
Well, yeah. I mean, I accounted for that when I mentioned the Minnesota prediction anyways.
Applications for fourth co-host can be sent to Harry Broadhurst,
So,
atbtheeneagle@yahoo.com.
So that was your problem.
We've already talked about replacing Bisco off Erik. So we just need a third. We don't need a fourth.
That was your problem there. This week, however, they're playing the Bungles. So it's not
Do they have video footage of it?
Exactly. They still surprisingly thought they had to cheat to beat the Bungles, but still they're gonna beat the Bungles.
Have you seen their offense? It's honestly not as surprising as you think, now that I consider it.
Yeah.
I need Cincinnati to do us a solid, but I'm not expecting it. Who I really need to do us a solid is your fellow Floridian team in Week 17, Erik.
Mm-hmm.
If your fellow Floridian team could do us an ultra solid in Week 17, it would be greatly appreciated. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the NFL would greatly appreciate it as well.
I mean, it's happened before. We got you. the power of Florida man will activate one way or another.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Pats do seem to struggle in that building for some strange reason.
Brady's only right around 500.
So wait a minute, they're going to Miami on week 17?
Let me see.
I thought the game was in Foxborough on week 17.
You may be right.
Oh wait,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Never mind. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the likelihood of that happening is very slim.
Florida man don't do cold, Broadhurst.
Nope. No, he does not. All right, so Erik had 6 earlier in the season. I tied him with 6 3 weeks ago. The throne has once again been tied as Jason has a 6-game winning streak active. And, well, speaking of bunnies, it looks like Jason's going for one in order to take the crown.
I am going to take Drew Brees and the Saints over the Colts to extend to a 7-game survivor streak and sit on top of the throne all by my lonesome, looking down at my peasants.
Real quick, to paraphrase an old phrase about Cincinnati, meet the Bungles, greet the Bungles, step on up and beat the Bungles.
Oh, and Erik, I just realized something.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be touring the stadium the Saturday before the draft.
Ooh. Because if things go well, there were plans that I might be in Vegas for the draft. I just got to cobble together a couple of things. So this would be a double very good experience. Hell,
So,
maybe I can give the regime in charge some tips.
we might get to meet some people. I'm going to work my magic and hopefully do that.
All right, let's get back to the show at hand here, because now it is time for I've Got a Question. Although apparently Brandon and Erik have a conversation.
Okay.
I told you I would leave the floor to you for this one, guys. So by all means, Erik, the floor is yours.
Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a mild segue.
Segue!
Because close your eyes and imagine this.
I don't trust it when you tell me to close my eyes.
Look, after what happened Monday, trust me, you don't have to worry about that. That's already out of my system. Although it's a very interesting thing.
Family show!
Anyway, so imagine this. It's the first Saturday in December. Lincoln Financial Field. It's still cold. You get a little bit of snow. You got the pageantry, the circumstance. Hopefully a different guy who's not orange tossing the coin. The two teams battling it out with an extra wrinkle. One of them winning the American Athletic Conference. Another doing something they couldn't do the first time around and winning Conference USA. But no, after their victories over the lowly Falcons of the Air Force Academy, there's more than just the Commander-in-Chief trophy on the line. The rankings have to be delayed 1 week for the first time since the playoff system created. Why? Because in the new expanded 8-team playoff, your conference champion Army, conference champion Navy, battling it out for the 8th seed. Now, wait a minute, you say. What 8th seed? I thought there were only 4. Well, and I'm sure Bisco would agree with me on this, what if you got rid of conference championship week? What if pod conferences implemented the pod system? So that way, everything would still be settled on the field. But you could have all of your Power 5 champs, and your Group of 5 champion, and 2 at-large bids, waiting for that very next week after Army-Navy, fighting for the right to host, for the first time ever, playoff games, marching forward to those bowls 2 weeks later, even with a little consolation thrown in for those unlucky quarterfinal losers. I'm going to sit here at my desk with my sign in my blue sweater, sipping my coffee, change my mind.
This is and I hate to say it, because as anyone who's listened to the show throughout the years knows, I've been the most ardent supporter for an expansion and getting a real playoff system in place for college football. I hate to say it, but this year kind of sets them back, because there wasn't really much of a debate for the top 4. The last 2 years, they had you had UCF at undefeated, had the opportunity, should have had the opportunity to get in. The year prior, the first year that the college football playoff was implemented, you had I think it was Western Michigan who was undefeated, and they could have had a legitimate claim to get in.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there, because no team in the MAC will ever have a legitimate claim to be the national champion of college football.
But you have to have that potential option to put the top non-Power 5 school in there.
So say it's not the MAC though. Like, for example, if you were to look at this year's field, you would have LSU hosting Memphis.
Yep.
You would have, and I saw this on ESPN, updated after the conference championship games, you would have Ohio State. Rather, instead of hosting Florida, sorry, Harry, they had Baylor getting in.
Well, Baylor's a 2-loss team out of the Big 12, and their only 2 losses are to the conference champion Oklahoma. It's kind of hard to argue Baylor getting in over Florida.
And then you have, speaking of that conference champ, you have number 4 Oklahoma against number 5. You could argue with Georgia, especially because Utah kind of crapped the bed. And Oregon, after kind of resurrecting themselves, rebounding, and putting a hurt on Utah, their reward is going and facing 3-seed Clemson.
See, I would flip Baylor and Oregon. I would argue that Baylor's 2 losses are more impressive than Oregon's.
And again, that's doable. So you would have a nice Clemson, Baylor, and then
Ohio State, Oregon, which was the national championship game a couple of years ago, 2012, 13.
Well, it was actually the national championship game of the first college football playoff.
So 14.
15?
No, yeah, that was 15, because the first one, it was the year that Ohio State won the national championship out of the 4 seed, which I remember I was thinking, everyone who was a college football fan was thinking that was a big upset. But if you really think about it, it really wasn't.
All right, okay, but here's my problem with the expansion to 8, and it's going to be the same problem that I had with the NCAA men's basketball tournament expanding as well. Where do you draw the line? Because if you can say that we can fit 8 teams, then there are going to be those that can argue that we can fit 16. And if you say we can fit 16, there are those that are going to argue that we could fit 20.
Okay. Now, I can counter that argument because, yes, if you were looking at just between the FCS Division 2 and Division 3, the only playoff that has not expanded within the past decade is Division 3 at 32 teams. But with Division 3, they play a much more strict 10-game regular season, and then they have your 5 rounds of playoffs to where you get to the Stag Bowl.
Unless
Hmm?
Unless you were Mount Union this year.
Yeah, North Central. Hopefully you can complete the job, but then again, Wisconsin Whitewater might be the last ones laughing, but that's for another day. So with Division II, yes, they've expanded, albeit much more gradually, from up to 24, now 28. And the FCS, in the recent years, after not expanding beyond 16, they went to 20 and 24. But again, no conference championship games, and only FCS do they have still the 11-game season.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, with the bowl subdivision, I wouldn't mind stopping at just the 8.
I mean, while yes, theoretically, you could certainly expand to 16 with automatic bids to the conference champions, which in an ideal world I'd probably like to see. But if you do 8 with the caveat that there has to be, that let's say the winners of the Power 5 conferences, the best group of 5 winner, or the best group of 5 team, and then 2 at-large bids, I'm fine with that, because it sets out a distinctive criteria for teams to get in, as close to a distinctive criteria as you can get.
I disagree, and here's why.
Okay.
This actually encourages descheduling if you're in a smaller conference. It encourages you to play a lesser schedule if you're in a smaller conference, in order to keep your team fresh and injury-free going into your conference games, in order to attempt to run the table. It discourages teams from taking the chances that we see with these mid-majors that go to these money games and end up pulling off these massive upsets.
Okay, but for starters, and this is why I say, and I'll go into a quick thing using you, Harry, as an example with the pod system. You don't have a conference championship game to worry about. That's one hurdle taken away. Plus, you have that strong of a schedule. Even if, like, say with you run the table, you wouldn't necessarily be locked into the 8th seed. You could potentially be 7th, or depending on some of the at-large teams, you could get that 6th seed. Then what?
And here's the other thing too. While yes, I agree with your concept overall, a big reason for those games being scheduled in the first place now is that those pretty much are their championship games. So while some of the smaller schools may not want to go after the bigger schools in the non-conference schedule, it wouldn't really change all that much, because you would still have those opportunities later on.
All right, real quick before you expand, Eric. Jason hasn't had a chance to say much in this conversation. I want to get his thoughts on an expanded college playoff.
I'm right there with you, Harry. It's where do you draw the line? Everybody's going to bitch and complain about, oh well, the criteria how choosing teams is going to get muddled even more. And I think that, even though the current system isn't perfect, and I would support a expanded playoffs, because we have so many non-existent bowls that we've got way too many bowls that have subpar teams in that's not drawing. We could fill those lesser bowls up as playoff games for expanded playoff series. But like I said, I'm a proponent of where do you draw the line about how many teams you let in. because you're always going to see the argument of if a team doesn't get in, they're going to argue that they should have got in, and you're going to get a group of whatever saying that they want to expand it even more just because their team was left out.
I don't think so, honestly, as long as you implement the rules that Eric and I are talking about, because the biggest argument that proponents of the expanded playoff have is that it's basic right now, even right now with the, quote unquote playoff that we have now, it's very subjective. It's all based on, like we've seen now this year, like I said, this is the exception to the rule, and this year they got it right. But in years past, you've had teams that aren't the big names, that aren't in a big conference, that have had great seasons, have had undefeated seasons, and have been left out because of where they play. And that's what you need to take out of the equation.
You know what I'm actually more in favor of rather than opening the door to all these mid-major conferences is? I honestly think you could kind of do like secondary divisions inside of the NCAA football complex, similar to like a relegation system like we have in English soccer. I feel like the top independent school from each area should replace the worst performing team in each of the major conferences every year.
So the top non-Power 5 of each region, but that would require a complete overhaul of the system because back before all the realignment started, that could work because each of the major conferences had a territory. Now that's not really the case anymore.
Ever since you had the College Football Association, which was formed by schools like Oklahoma and Georgia, sue the NCAA over television contract rights, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the CFA back in 1984, that argument, as Bisco just said, is out the window. I've seen situations to where you could even get 7 divisions deep in a pro-rel system going all the way down to Division 3, but logistically it would be way too much of a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, like I said, it would require a complete overhaul of college athletics.
I'm a big bowl game guy. I have been since I was a kid.
See, I don't mind the bowls. My opinion has always been you can't have your cake and eat it too. Either go back to purely mythical national champions where it's just votes and all you're playing for is the bowls, and that's fine. Like a high school type system where, you're only focused on yourself. Or make a real playoff system. Don't make it where you say, "Oh, we have a playoff. We're gonna truly crown a national champion," but 75% of the teams are excluded from the conversation.
And again, you can incorporate some of the bowls into that playoff. Say even in our 8-team system, for those quarterfinal losers, they can go and match up somehow in some sort of bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
All right, real quick here, before we continue on with the rest of the show, because we do have a couple other things we got to get to, and we will definitely pick this conversation up again at some point, probably in the near future, as we get more and more into discussing the bowl games. I want to give everybody
the pod system.
I will give everybody a heads up ahead of time. The college football predictions we make next week will be one of the original bowl games up to the Hawaii Bowl. So you guys make sure you check the bowl games that are scheduled from the 18th to the 24th for our predictions for next week. It could be any one of those bowl games inside of there, but you're picking against the spread.
Okay. Because, just to kind of get this, and I'll just make this only a couple minutes. You, Harry, you are the self-proclaimed SEC apologist on the show, right?
I am.
You're among the SEC. You're a Gator fan, are you not?
Of course.
Now, pick 3 SEC teams you would want to play every year. I'm sure Georgia and probably Tennessee are 2 of the 3, but not you pick.
Well, obviously, Tennessee is probably the biggest rival for Florida in the SEC, just because it goes back to the glory days for the SEC back into the 90s when everything was happening there. Georgia's probably the marquee matchup now, and if I had to pick a third from our subdivision, I would argue it's a toss up between Kentucky or South Carolina.
Okay, so what if I were to tell you you would still be able to play Florida, or you would still be able to play Georgia, Tennessee, and let's just say for the argument South Carolina every year, but you would alternate for your other 5 conference games home and homes against everybody else in the conference. So that way, over a 4-year span, or even if in a 3-year span,
here's the issue with that.
Everybody in the SEC at least once, and in a 4-year span, you will have played them home and away, everybody.
Here's the issue with that. The issue with that is that you're talking a radical realignment to move every conference to 8 or 10 teams.
No. Here's the thing about the pod system. You could keep your conferences as they are. No realignment necessary. Each school would have so many, what we would call permanent rivals, and then you would have home and homes against the rest. The SEC could still have 8 games. Your Pac-12 could still do 9. Big Ten, all
9.
of them. Yeah, they would still have their 9. It could work. The potential trade-off would be, especially for the 8-team system, you take away the conference championship games.
We'll have to come back to this conversation at another time when we have more time to discuss it, because we're coming up on a little bit over an hour into the show now. We still got a couple of other segments to get to, one of which takes a little bit of time. Just the only thought that real quick, the last thing that I'm going to say about this, and then we'll move on here, is I am not against fixing a broken system. And at times the NCAA's football system has clearly been broken. That being said, you need to find more permanent solutions in order to fix it, rather than just coming up with haphazard theories that may or may not work given geographical locations, giving semantics, and giving abilities to get these schedulings in due to availability in venues and such.
Agreed, but continue.
I'm not saying that it's not possible to realign the schedules in order to move to a rotating schedule of playing everybody here, there, and I think that's actually what the SEC does, actually, is you play all of the teams in your conference every year, or the other 5 or the other 6 on your side, and then you rotate the 7 teams in the other side of the conference.
Yeah, because that's the actual NCAA rule. If you have a conference championship game, you either have to play everybody in your conference and have the top 2, a provision made specifically for the Big 12, or you have to have 2 divisions. You have to play everyone in your division.
All right, Jason, real quick, I want to let you get the final word here because you haven't said much in this conversation.
My theory would be it's actually kind of simple. If you do go to something along a 8-team or even staying at the 4-team, just make sure that you can't double up the conference. Eliminate the SEC bias that the voting committee has. yeah, I mean, there's times that, two of the best teams are going to be from the SEC. But that's why you have an SEC title game. That's why you have the conference championship to represent that conference. In no way should two teams be able to come from the same conference.
All right, if you're going to go,
I
real
think
quick.
that, I mean, yeah, there might, like I said, there might be times where two teams are representative, or two of the best teams in the nation are from one conference. But if that happens, then they play in the conference championship, see who's better.
All right, the only issue that I have is if you're encouraging that we give out a bid to every champion here, then you would be looking at a team like 8-5 Miami of Ohio in the national championship picture this year.
No, I'm not saying give out a bid to every team. I'm saying you cannot have two teams you can't have two SEC teams in. You can't have, keep it to four, but ensure that if you're going to do the four, that it's not two SEC teams, not two.
Basically saying four conference champions.
He's saying under the current system, not under the expanded one.
And if you go under the expanded, you can have one of those at-large bids be, conference doubling up, but at least have your conferences represented. I mean, look at the NCAA. Does the conference championship get automatic bid? Yes. Is there sometimes where that conference championship pulls an upset? More often than not. So, I mean, you can't say, oh, well, just because it's a mid-major school that they don't deserve it.
Exactly.
Let them prove it. I mean, if they're good enough, do it this way. The top 10 teams at the end of the year play for a national title. If you're in the top 10, play for a national title.
So what? 1 through 6 get a first round bye. 7 plays 10. 8 plays 9.
Correct.
You'd have a 10 team go 1, 2.
Yes, Harry just had it perfectly. The top 6 get the first round. Get the first round bye. 7 plays 10. 8 plays 9. And how it would really line up, you would have the 7-10 winner play the 2, the 8-9 winner play the 1, 3 played 6, and 4 played 5, if you're sticking with the true bracket system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, we can continue this conversation for the rest of the show. We have other things to get to. I'm sure we will circle back to it during the off season, because there will be times where we won't have tons of stuff to talk about this during the off season. So we'll circle back to it later. For now, we're going to tell those who are underperforming, unlike the college committee who did get it right this year with the 4 teams that are in, to get it together. Erik?
Oh, you know what? There's a saying that John Dorsey really needs to hear. If you can't stand the heat, don't hire Freddie Kitchens. I mean, I was not a fan of the Pittsburgh started a t-shirt. I'm not a fan of always looking like, this is your side gig when I need to be talking to you in Home Depot about what kind of tile that I get to use. It's clear how the Browns are going. It's not working. I know why Dorsey hired Kitchens. That was stupid in of itself. But I'm telling the organization, especially after this whole OBJ situation, him supposedly telling other teams and coaches, hey, come get me. Baker Mayfield either staying at a Holiday Inn Express one night or deciding that he can play doctor on TV, discussing this whole situation with him and his sports hernia. For the love of every holy deity known to man, Cleveland, get it together. Hard Knocks was great, but you're not on reality TV anymore. Even that's too far for this right now. Jesus, I predicted they would still be a dumpster fire, and boy, are they proving me right.
As I said at the beginning of the season, Browns are going to Browns, and I think Jason would have to agree with me. Hey, OBJ, you reap what you sow.
Oh, I was one of the main people to be against the OBJ trade, and then I started seeing when he threw Eli under the bus the way he did, and then he came out and said that he's so happy to be playing with a real quarterback, and he's not going to be hampered with his abilities and everything. Yeah, and how's that working out for him? He then threw Baker under the bus, threw the coaching staff under the bus. I mean, I think the kid's got talent, but I think he's going the way of Terrell Owens.
He's just not happy, and he's never going to really be happy. Even if he got a switch with the Rams or the Niners, I'm very inclined to agree with you.
I believe the term Jason is looking for is perennial malcontent.
Yeah, that's very correct.
And unfortunately, we've kind of seen that become something of a status quo in the NFL, where if things aren't going my way, then I want the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
I take you to earlier this season and the conversations that we just had once again about Le'Veon Bell running out of the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
After running out of Pittsburgh. After sitting out for the entire year because he wanted out of Pittsburgh. Now you're looking at potential franchise tags for Dak Prescott in Dallas, and he's going to want out of Dallas after Ezekiel Elliott wanted out of Dallas unless he was paid. My point being is that for superstar athletes in the way that we treat them nowadays, nothing is going to be enough, and especially with the higher salaried athletes in the National Football League.
Well, I think a lot of these athletes need to start understanding, and, there are some exceptions to the rules oftentimes at the quarterback position, where you need to think, do you want a title or do you want to get paid? Because they are not mutually exclusive.
I think you mean they are mutually exclusive.
Yes, okay, you're correct.
You're either going to get paid or you're going to win
be on a good team that will get you a championship.
You chase money or you chase rings.
Exactly.
I chase puppies.
Well,
and
bunnies, more specifically. But anyway, moving on. Brandon, get it together.
My get it together this week is to the Houston Texans, who lost to the Broncos this week. You're supposed to be the top team in the AFC South. You should be able to beat the Broncos. Yes, the Broncos have been playing a little bit better as of late, but still, especially after putting that walloping on the Patriots last week, get it together.
They will.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'll talk about them more later.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dramatic reverb.
Jason, get it together.
My get it together is not only for 1 week. Mine's for a season. Just curious, how can you be one of the most bipolar quarterbacks in the NFL? You have 2 receivers and the top 10 in yards and touchdowns. Yeah, and if you would guess that quarterback is Jameis Winston, you're higher than draft pussy because no one would believe you. But Indeed, it is. In fact, up till Mike Evans got hurt, him and Godwin were in the top 10 receiving, and he is also leading the league in interceptions and just boneheaded plays altogether. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is a very hot take. You're not going to see Winston under center next year, but the most sought after coach in the offseason will be a familiar name for myself and also Harry, due to Harry, being in the Youngstown area and being familiar with the O coordinator and that is under Bruce Arians currently, and being able to see some of his exploits here at Marshall University, and that's Byron Leftwich.
I'm familiar with him too.
Well, only because he's black.
And he played for the Jags.
Yes, you forget he played several years here for the Jaguars.
It is going to be interesting to see Leftwich, because he was one of the original more running style quarterbacks, so he could very well help a younger dual threat quarterback.
I think if he lands with somewhere that has a solid quarterback that is a dual threat quarterback, I think that's going to be something special. I think you're going to see him, in which I'm going to go out on a limb. There's been talk here in Huntington that Doc Holliday may be on his way out, and Marshall may pursue Leftwich as the head coach to come home and coach here in Huntington.
You better him coming home to Marshall than coming here to Jacksonville, because we've put him through enough. But I mean, speaking with the infamous Jameis, I mean, you gotta be special to throw for over 450 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Not everybody can do that.
That's a decent stat line for some quarterbacks.
Yes, it is.
I just want to throw this out there to Bisco, since me and him share a favorite NFL team. There's talk that the Giants may be looking for a head coach.
There should be more talk at this point.
Yeah.
Would that be nice? How would you feel if we, at the Giants, signed someone like Leftwich to take Daniel Jones under his wing and lead him? Would that be something that would intrigue you as a fellow Giants fan?
I mean, it would be an intriguing pick, definitely. I just don't know if Jones is enough of that style of quarterback to really be helped that much by a Byron Leftwich.
Well, Leftwich relied on his arm more than his legs.
True.
He had the ability to run, but he was always a pass first quarterback. He would beat you with his arm and then keep you contained with his legs.
Yeah, but Jason, think about it. Do you really think Byron would want to go from infamous Jameis to Danny Loose Change? I'm sorry, to me that's lateral.
Well, it all depends on the draft, where the Giants end up with the draft. I think Gettleman's could be on the hot seat with his snafu, because honestly, I think that if the Giants would have went the route that I had hoped they went, they would have not only still had got their franchise quarterback, but still got a solid defensive player that they could have anchored a defense around. But that being said, hindsight's 2020. Who knows what's going on in New York? As a fan, I would love to know.
50 career carries, 50 career games started, 137 carries, 415 yards rushing for Byron Leftwich in his career. 930 of 1605 for 10,532 yards passing for Leftwich.
And those are the stats of why we eventually went to David Garrard.
The issue with Leftwich as a starting quarterback, though, is he was under 500 as a starter.
Well, it didn't help he was in Jacksonville.
Actually, believe it or not, he was over 500 in Jacksonville. It was when he left Jacksonville that he went 0-6 as a starter and lost his above 500 record.
I forget, where did he go where did he go after Jacksonville?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, you're right.
Atlanta first, then to Pittsburgh, to Tampa Bay, and then back to Pittsburgh. 0-2 in Atlanta, 0-3 in Tampa Bay as a starter, 0-1 in Pittsburgh as a starter. All statistics courtesy of ProFootballReference.com. Highly recommended website. Make sure I throw a link. I'll make sure I throw a link into the to the show preview real quick. All right. So my get it together goes to a pair of teams who have something in common. Would you like to guess what they have in common, Eric?
I'll
give you the teams. Are you ready?
Ready.
Detroit and Carolina.
They've both sucked off the dicks this year.
Well, they both had situations to where they had losing records, but involved a tie, and they're both on this year on backup quarterbacks.
By a combined score of 48-37, these are the two teams that have lost to the Redacteds over the last 2 weeks.
Oh, that too.
Although Washington is coming off of a loss to Green Bay. Although Green Bay should get it together for the way they played against Washington, only winning by 5.
At home, no less.
Yeah. All right, so the entire NFC East is a dumpster fire. We've pretty much established this. Here's the thing, Philadelphia. You were given a gift by Chicago on Thursday Night Football. You were basically handed the division on Thursday Night Football by Chicago, because if Philly can win out, they were handed the division by Chicago, because they will have
but that would have involved basically everybody circling Week 16 against Dallas, which, imagine if that one ends up in a tie, then we're really going to be miserable.
And if that game ends up in a tie, then Dallas makes it due to the head-to-head win. Anything that keeps Dallas out of the playoffs is cool in my book. But seriously, teams facing Washington, get it together. That goes for you, Detroit. That goes for you, Carolina. And that goes for you, Green Bay. All of you. Get it together. The whole freaking lot of you.
Oh, if only that division could have ended in that 4-way massacre of 6-10. Oh.
Sadly, Eric, you know how that 6-10 massacre ends?
Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Because they played all of their in-division games earlier in the season and went 4-0 in them.
Well, then they go ahead and they potentially get beat or, bitch smacked at home by old rival San Francisco in the wild card round, and everybody's happy.
Actually, they get bitch smacked at home by old rival Seattle in the wild card round because San Francisco's winning the West. Seattle did themselves no favors losing to the Rams on Sunday Night Football the way that they did.
Part of me agrees with you, but again, Darby revenge.
All right, you guys ready for Are You Serious and to wrap up the show?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so we have a special format for Are You Serious this week. We're going to start with the NFL prediction because the NFL prediction is going to stick to its traditional format, at least +3. The lines were not good this week. I'm going to be blatantly honest with everybody listening at home. There were very few games when they originally came up that were above 3. A couple of them have snuck towards the 3 line, so we'll see if anybody jumps on them. Jason, you had a very bold prediction earlier in the show about Denver and Kansas City. Care to put your money where your mouth is?
You damn right. I'm taking Denver +9.5.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
And I will go on record. If Denver wins outright, I advise all 3 of you to mute the W2M Sports Chat.
I'll go next here. My official Are You Serious prediction for the week is Chicago over Green Bay. You know what I just mentioned about Green Bay at home against Washington? Yeah. Well, now they're facing a Chicago team that has some momentum and still has an outside possibility at a wild card spot in the NFC. It is very outside possibility, but to quote Dumb and Dumber, so you're saying there's a chance.
You're welcome, by the way.
I'm officially taking Chicago +5.5. Although I do think Green Bay wins the game, though. But Chicago covers. It happens that way. All right, Brandon, you're up.
Remember how I was saying the Texans should get it together? I think they will get it together this week and beat the Titans. Texans.
What's the number?
+3.
So, actually, when I first looked at the score lines, I don't think that game was eligible because I think that was one of the ones that was sitting at 2.5 when I first looked. So, it's gone up to 3 in favor of Houston.
Yep.
That's for the outright lead in the AFC South, too.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that they'll also be seeing each other again real soon after this.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that a Week 17 and probably the Sunday night game for Week 17?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed it is.
All right, Eric, you're up.
Now, we talked about this early in the show, especially with the Niners. Emotional game, emotional win. Plus, and this is an interesting trend, not just this season, but going back a ways. Look at teams who are very good against the spread. Look at teams who are god-awful against the spread. If you bet on those teams that are terrible against the spread, you're doing yourself quite a bit of a favor, and you're making yourself a tidy profit. The stars are going to align. I think the Niners win, but the Falcons +11 cover.
After an emotionally draining game against New Orleans, that 11 line's way too much.
Mm-hmm. And it was actually bet up a little bit. That one was floating 10.5. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of 10.5, what are things Michael Jackson's lawyer said? No. Okay. Now I'm the one getting us thrown. The views and opinions of Harry Broadhurst do not. Never mind. Anyway. All right. So I bring up that number because that's the line for the only game in college football this week. And to be perfectly blunt about it, the only game in college football that actually fucking matters. I don't care what the records for these two teams are. I don't care that Army's 5-7. I don't care that Navy's 9-2. I don't care that Navy could have potentially played last week had Cincinnati beaten Memphis. None of that matters to me. This is the game in college football because we've talked about this for the last 2 years on the show, and I will stand by this statement here. The men that play in this game and the women that attend these academies are the best and the brightest that this country has to offer. Therefore, you're going to pick this game against the spread, which at current, I believe, is Navy minus 10.5.
Yes.
But let's be blatantly honest here, gentlemen. The real winners in this game are all of us as citizens of the United States, knowing that we have these young men and young women looking out for our future.
Especially after the recent unfortunate tragedies that have unfolded in primarily Pensacola, but all throughout the country.
Brandon.
This is a tough one, because I definitely think Navy is going to win this, but especially with it being Army-Navy, these games, no matter who's the better team at the time, this is the game that both schools look forward to all year. This is their national championship. I think it's going to be closer than 10, so I have to pick Army against the spread.
Care to throw me a prediction?
I'll say Navy by 7.
Jason.
Army straight up by 3, 21-18.
Erik.
Army beat Navy to win the Collegiate Sprint Football League title about 5 short weeks ago. A 13-0 shutout. I don't know. I think this is the first time that I've said this since we started talking about this game. Go Navy, beat Army. Navy wins by 2 touchdowns.
Navy is playing for more than just a victory over Army here. Navy is playing for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy as well. Navy beat Air Force. Army lost to Air Force. Therefore, a Navy victory would bring the Commander-in-Chief trophy back home to Navy for the first time since 2016. You can't tell me that doesn't mean something to those men and women at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland.
Because I don't fully know how it officially works. If Army were to beat Navy, who would get it then? Would no one? Because it's a circle or a triangle?
I believe it would go to point differential.
Oh, okay.
In Bisco, you were actually right. The term for that is Circle of Death. And if it were 5 teams, it would be a Death Star.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm going to get us sued. All right, moving on. To stand behind what Erik just said, go Navy, beat Army.
Yep, agreed.
I will. It doesn't matter how many times we pick this game. In my heart, I will always root for Navy to win this game.
Yep, same here.
It's just because you like seeing it.
Way to ruin a pleasant moment, Jason. Perfect timing as always.
It actually would not go down 2-point differential because there have been multiple occasions to where the trophy would be shared.
So what, they would each get custody of it for like 4 months?
Well, in this
weekends only.
in this case, since the trophy would officially be shared, since Army currently has
stay with Army,
they would stay with them, but it would be considered a shared trophy, and that would be the first time since '93.
Or they could just settle it on the basketball court.
What really would happen is every other weekend they would meet in the local Walmart parking lot for the exchange.
But which local parking lot? I mean, are you going?
And Air Force gets it 2 weeks out of the summer
and the holiday.
Say you're dealing with Colorado Springs, Annapolis and West Point, New York.
I'm just saying I ain't trusting any parking lot in Colorado Springs.
I don't know. Unless you still have Lieutenant Joe Kenda around, then you may be okay.
All right, let's wrap up. I'm falling asleep.
We are going to wrap up here, actually. So, yeah, like I said, it really doesn't matter who actually wins the game on Sunday. My big wish and my biggest hope, and we've seen it in previous years, and I hope we don't this Saturday, I want all of these young men to stay safe. The game is great. Competition is wonderful. But remember that those are your brothers. Tempers will flare during this game, as they are wont to do. But these are the men that'll be on the battle lines with you once the time comes if this nation needs you. And for that, we all say thank you.
And Harry still loves semen.
I had to keep silent with what I was thinking because, well, frankly, I didn't want to go there. Anywho.
Remember, the views and opinions of Harry Broadhurst, not of W2M Network.
I was waiting for
they don't result in the kickoff, but they fully represent W2M Network. Just not the kickoff.
We're going to hell. It's okay.
Enjoy the ride because it's going to be swell.
I'm driving the bus.
It's a short bus.
All right.
And now that we've come...
put this out there as a side note, the chick referee for AEW is kind of hot in a way. Just throwing that out there.
Earl Hebner? Aubrey Edwards?
I don't know. The dark-headed chick.
I'm assuming he's talking about Aubrey.
I don't care. Dude, her name means nothing to me.
Well, then again, MJF refers to Jen Decker as Tits McGee. Which, to be fair, Jen Decker did become famous in this country because she was shaking her boobs on a primetime college football broadcast. So, you know. That's the infamous Musburger chick, Eric.
I know. It just makes me pine for the days. It makes me wish I could have been alive when Morgana the Kissing Bandit was at her peak. God, let me tell you.
Jen Decker.
This has officially completely gone off the rails.
Nope, we're wrapping it up. Don't worry. For Jason Teasley, Brandon Biskobing, and Erik Watkins, I'm Harry Broadhurst. This has been episode 14 of season 3 of The Kickoff here on the W2M Network. We are a presentation of the W2M Network online at W2Mnet.com. In addition, you can find us in all of your favorite podcast listening services, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean, CastBox. Hey, Brandon, guess what?
Spotify is here.
And I love bunnies.
Dick. Hopefully somebody heard me because Jason spoke over my line.
I did hear who you said.
I said Braxton Sutter's a dick.
Oh, okay.
And I said we love bunnies.
If you would prefer a more contemporary reference, Pepper Parks. You should understand what that means.
Okay.
If you don't, I will explain it when we're done. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you guys next week with the first of the bold predictions, as well as our Week 16 NFL predictions and discussion from this week in the NFL as well. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time here on The Kickoff on the W2M Network.